Mom, I asked you not to fight with Tiffany. She is pregnant and reacts very sharply to everything. We decided to continue our trip without you. Go home, pack your things and leave our house before we return. My son told me, kissed me on the cheek and left me at the airport in a strange place. Without money and a credit card. My name is Elizabeth. I was born and raised in Chicago. But at the age of 65, life slapped me with a slap from my own son. That kiss reminded me of the kiss of Judas. He chose a wife, although I had chosen him all my life. Because of him, I did not get married a second time. I knew that with his complex character, he would not get along with any stepfather. There you go. That's the opening line my son rehearsed like an apology but delivered like a memo. If you're new to my life, hello. I'm Elizabeth. Liz if we're friendly, Ms. Burke if you're selling me an extended warranty. Chicago-born, Chicago-stubborn. I clip coupons, I tip in cash, and I can pick a ripe melon by sound. I also raised a boy who grew into a man who lets a pregnant woman do his talking, then kisses his mother goodbye like a thief returning a borrowed pen. It started on the flight to Honolulu, row 23, seats A through D. A domestic battleground with sky pretzels. My granddaughters Christine and Lucy are 5 and 7, built like hummingbirds and powered entirely by chocolate and something called Yagato juice, which I'm convinced is just sugar with a marketing department. They can't sit still. Their legs are tiny pistons, their minds are fireflies, and their bladders, Lord bless them, are clocks that chime every 8 minutes on the dot. Grandma, I have to go again, Lucy whispered for the third time during takeoff. You can't negotiate with a 7-year-old bladder, so up we went, past the man guarding his aisle seat like a dragon over a horde of USB cables, past the flight attendant who had the eyes of a woman who's seen turbulence and toddlers and knows which one is worse. By the time we hit cruising altitude, they'd split a family-sized bar of chocolate that could have been used as currency in 3 countries. They were happy though, bright-eyed, giggly, each sentence ending in an exclamation point. Which is precisely when Tiffany turned to me with a smile as sharp as a cheese grater. We brought you so you could, do your job, she said through her teeth. We need rest. The girls need structure. Not indulgence. Indulgence. As if letting a child eat 2 squares of Hershey's is what broke Rome. I can structure a bathroom line, I said lightly. 1 at a time clockwise. We'll make a schedule. She laughed the way people laugh right before they call security. Elizabeth, you're too soft. They don't listen to you. Christine, who hears everything, turned around in her seat. I listen, Mommy. Grandma said I can be an astronaut if I learn to zip my jacket on the first try. Tiffany's eyes did a quick calculation. How many witnesses? How many miles to Honolulu? Then lowered her voice. We took you on this trip to watch them, so we could rest as a couple. By took me, you mean I paid for the extra suitcase, the hotel upgrade, and the airport parking because your app glitched? I asked. I stayed sweet. I always stay sweet until it's time to serve the lemon peel. She went silent, then pressed her call button. I need ginger ale, she told the flight attendant. It's for nausea. I'm pregnant. I'm aware, I said, because for 3 months she'd ended every sentence with I'm pregnant. It had a biblical ring to it the way she said it, like let there be light. When we landed, Honolulu air rolled into the cabin like warm bread. The girls clapped because planes are Broadway shows to them. Curtains up, curtains down, applause. I had visions of sand and guava and the girls chasing waves while I sat on a faded beach chair reading a paperback that smelled like other people's summers. Instead, we made it as far as the baggage carousel before the trial began. Tiffany stepped 2 feet from me and gathered an audience of 1, my son. She spoke in that careful, fragile register that makes a man feel like a hero, even as you hand him a sword. Baby, I can't do it. Your mom spoils them. They're out of control. She gave them chocolate. They had so much Yagato juice we spent all flight in the bathroom. She wanted the aisle, I said. She got the aisle. I'm pregnant, she whispered and wiped a dry eye with a fresh tissue. She is impressively hydrated for a woman who never drinks water. He pulled me aside by the rental car counter where a plastic plumeria tried to look alive. The speech came pre-assembled. Mom, she's overwhelmed. You know how she gets. She asked me to choose. I love you, but this is my family. I'm your family, I said. Not a yell, not a plea. Fact like weather. He kissed my cheek, the Judas peck, and pressed a paper itinerary into my hand like it was severance. Go home. Pack your things. We'll talk when we're back. And then he was gone. Tiffany's hand looped through his arm like a leash disguised as jewelry. The girls dragged along in a wake of rolling suitcases and soft-focused dreams. Christine looked back once, small face folding. I gave her the sturdy smile I keep in my purse for falling ice cream and first days of school. She waved. Lucy blew a kiss. And the automatic doors swallowed them whole. I stood there in the airport, not quite crying, not quite anything, hollow as a bell that still remembers the sound it was made to make. My wallet was a crime scene. No credit cards, he'd borrowed mine for the booking weeks ago and never returned it. My debit card missing too, likely left near the kitchen sink where it had slid behind the flour canister. I had my phone at 9% battery, set to airplane mode out of habit because I like my rules. There's a special loneliness to being broke in a beautiful place. I sat on a bench near the tourist brochures, swim with dolphins, eat with aunties, find yourself for $299, and breathed. Hunger slipped an arm around my waist. Exhaustion laid its head on my shoulder. That's when I remembered my grandmother's voice, the one that curls out of the past whenever I'm about to do something foolish or brave. Just in case something happens in life, she'd say, tapping her purse like it was a vault. Always carry your 10. Your emergency 10. You can't spend it until life puts you in the most uncomfortable position. I fished through receipts and peppermint wrappers in one of those tiny hotel soaps I can't stop stealing, and there it was. Crisp and folded. A little green life raft. $10. My emergency 10. I would have kissed it, but I'm classy. The food court offered options in the same way. A storm offers flavors of lightning. I found the cheapest hamburger stand, ordered a small water and a burger with a dignity bun, no fries. The woman at the register had eyes like a tired angel. She punched numbers, frowned. Cash only for small orders right now. Systems being fussy, she said. Perfect. I am a small order, I said, and slid over my 10 like a magician's reveal. She opened the drawer, then winced. Shoot. I've got no ones. I can't break this. The old me would have said, it's fine, keep the change, because mothers spend their lives giving the world their ones. The new me, the me with a cheek still warm from betrayal, smiled and waited. She thought for a second, then brightened. Tell you what. We've got a little promo going. Instead of your change, you can take one of these. She reached under the counter and came up with a fan of bright cards. Airport Aloha, scratch and win. It's silly, but folks like 'em. Might win you a coffee. Might win you something real. You want your $6 in tickets? How easily the universe throws you a bone when you've been gnawed on. Does that count as legal tender? I asked. It counts as me not feeling like a thief, she said, and slid 4 scratchers across the counter, plus my burger and water like communion. Good luck, Auntie. Auntie. The island word that wraps you in a lei whether you deserve it or not. I took my tray, sat by a window that offered me a sliver of runway and a lot of sky. The burger was small but honest. The water was cold and tasted like forgiveness. I lined up the tickets like soldiers, their metallic panels winking. You should know this about me. I don't believe in luck. I believe in women. I believe in recipes, and the way you can make something beautiful out of eggs and grief. I believe in the $10 rule. I believe in showing up. But I also believe in listening when the world whispers your name. The first ticket was a loss. The second was a consolation prize. Free coffee at a kiosk shaped like a surfboard. The third promised match 3 coconuts, win big. And gave me 2 coconuts and a pineapple, which felt rude. I stared at the fourth, the cheap border glinting, the words Aloha Millions printed in a font that wanted to be important. I scratched the first square with the edge of my house key. A 7. I scratched the second. Another 7. Don't be dramatic, I told the card, and glanced around to make sure no one saw me talking to paper. The third square. A 7 again. Something in the air changed, quiet as a tide turning, strict as a judge. My heart made a sound I hadn't heard since my son took his first steps. A jump and a prayer. I checked the back of the card. The small print that always hides the rules and the sins. 3 sevens in a row, grand prize $2 million. $2 million. The number looked like a dare. I traced it with my finger like a blessing. I wasn't sure I was allowed to accept. Ma'am. The cashier had walked around her counter, concern in her face. You all right? I think so, I said. Or I've just been hit by a friendly bus. We marched together to the nearest clerk with a handheld scanner the size of my old church hymnal. He set my card on the glass. The beam swept across with a lazy beep. He glanced at the screen, then blinked, then looked at me like I just hatched. I need my manager, he said softly. Do you now? I said, because sometimes the only way to stay upright is to keep your sarcasm on a low flame. People always say in the moment everything slows down. They're wrong. Some moments crash through you at full speed and you just have to grab something solid. I grabbed the handle of my rolling bag in the memory of my grandmother's hands, veins like map lines, folding that $10 bill into my palm as if she were giving me a spell. Please wait here, the clerk said, and hustled away like a man who'd accidentally opened a door to a room full of lions. I looked out at the runway. A plane lifted its nose and rose into the blue like it had never been told no in its life. I checked my phone. 8% battery now, then slid it back in my bag. If this was a dream, it was a good one. If it was real, it was mine. The manager arrived at a brisk clip, all smiles and protocol. Aloha, ma'am. I'm Keahi. May I see the ticket? He took one look, tapped the scanner himself, and then his smile changed into something bright and reverent. Congratulations, he said, voice low like we were in church. You're about to have a very interesting day. Sweetheart, I told him, steady as the ground. My day started interesting. He laughed, nervous and sincere. We'll need to call the lottery office to verify and get you set up with a claim appointment. There's a process. Do you have someone you can call? Family. Family. The word sloshed in my chest. I pictured my son at check-in, nodding while Tiffany curated their vacation like a war plan. I pictured my granddaughters, sticky and joyful, chasing islands they wouldn't remember without pictures. I do, I said, but I think I'll call a friend. Keahi nodded as if I'd said something wise. Take your time. We'll bring you somewhere quieter. He led me toward a small office behind the smoothie stand, where the hum of blenders gave way to the hush of linoleum secrets. He handed me a paper cup of water and a pamphlet that said, "So you've won, now what?" in cheerful type. I held my emergency 10 creased Valiant and slipped it back into my wallet. You did your job, I whispered. Now go back to sleep. Then I dialed the one person who always answers no matter the hour, no matter the mess. The phone rang once, twice. Liz, came the voice, warm as Sunday soup. Bob, I said, and finally let a single tear fall. Not for loss but for relief. You won't believe what my 10 just bought me. He laughed. If it's a pineapple, I'll still be proud. Better, I said, the room suddenly very bright. But I'm going to need a ride home. Outside, a plane thundered down the runway. Inside, the manager pressed the speaker button, and somewhere beyond that polite hum the line clicked. A new voice came on, and 3 words I'd never expected to hear in my life arrived like a tide. Ma'am, it's confirmed. And that is exactly where I'll leave you for now. Ma'am, it's confirmed. The voice on speaker was calm as a librarian announcing overdue fees. This ticket is a grand prize winner. $2 million. We'll need you to come to the office tomorrow morning to complete verification. Do not sign or alter the back until we instruct you. Bring 2 forms of identification. Congratulations. Keahi covered the speaker with his hand, eyes bright like he'd just seen a whale breach in the food court. You good? I'm 65, I said. I've been good and I've been broke. Today I'm both. Where do I sign to not faint? Paperwork appeared. A temporary receipt, a chain of custody form, a polite paragraph on privacy. They slipped the ticket into a clear sleeve like it was a newborn they were sending to the nursery. I initialed here and signed there, my hand steady as a surgeon's, because let me tell you, there's no shakiness left in a woman who's been abandoned before lunch and rich by dinner. When the call ended, Keahi offered to walk me to a quieter lounge. You can charge your phone there, he said. And call, you know. Not my son, I said. I tasted the words. They were strange and strong. Today is not for pleading. I texted Bob. Alive. Also perhaps a newly minted cartoon character who holds a giant check. Call me if you're sitting down. The 3 dots pulsed, then his name flashed. Liz, I'm on my porch with an iced tea and a geranium judging me. Say it. I won, I said softly. $2 million. quiet then, but not the worried kind. The reverent kind. Of course you did, Bob said. Only you would turn exact change into capital. I need a ticket home. They kept my prize ticket to process. I've got my emergency tin and a free coffee voucher. You'll be home by morning, he said. I'll book you the red eye. And I'll be at arrivals with a sign that says, Elizabeth, Millionaire Heiress. Make it say Auntie Liz and draw a pineapple, I said. If joy is a muscle, mine had atrophied. It was waking up. He insisted on staying on the line until the airline confirmed my seat. Window or aisle? The agent asked. I'd like the seat that comes with an apology, I said. We settled on an aisle, my kingdom, my rules. On my way to the gate, I used my free coffee voucher. The barista wrote Auntie Li on the cup with a heart, and I decided people who spell auntie with a Y are angels. Called no one else. I didn't want to hear my son's justifications shaped like empathy. I didn't want Tiffany's quavering nobility. I wanted the hush before a storm belongs to me. The plane back to Chicago was full of Midwesterners who smelled like sunscreen and good intentions. I closed my eyes to pretend at sleep and opened them to find a memory sitting across from me. My grandmother at her sink, sleeves rolled up, telling me how to stretch a stew and laugh with your hands. If you're going to cry, she'd say, cry into the soup. Add salt. We landed to a dawn the color of unbuttered toast. Bob was there in cargo shorts and a grin, holding a handmade sign with a pineapple that looked more like a son wearing chainmail. He hugged me so tight my spine reset. You look like a woman who just told life to hold her purse, he said. I am a woman with a meeting, I said, checking my watch. Lottery office at 9. I'm driving, he said. We'll stop for a real breakfast, you don't have to budget. At the state lottery office, the waiting room smelled like new carpet and old dreams. A clerk named Deirdre led me to a conference room with a bowl of mints and a framed poster that said, Plan first, spend later. Music to my ears. Lump sum or annuity? She asked after the final verification, the scanning, the witness signatures, the photos where I smiled like a woman who'd been told she could have her original life back if she paid cash. Lump sum, I said. I have projects. She walked me through taxes and timelines and the subtle art of not telling your 37 cousins. We advise hiring a financial advisor, she said. Someone reputable. Someone who understands taxes, trusts, and backstops. I felt a nudge from the universe, like the tap of a stranger's shoulder on a crowded train. Bob, as if hearing it too, cleared his throat. About that, he said. My nephew's in town. Matthew. He left Wall Street to be a decent human. He works for a boutique firm now. Fiduciary, which I'm told means he's legally obligated not to buy a boat with your money. Boats give me hives, I said. But I like laws. We met Matthew that afternoon on Bob's porch, between the geraniums and the guiltless sun. He was mid-30s, clean-shaven, tie-less, with the kind of calm you get either from meditation or surviving a mother who loved you loudly. When he saw me, he stood straight like a scout. A pleasure, Ms. Burke, he said, hand warm, eyes direct. Uncle Bob says you've had a week. I'm Elizabeth, I said. And my week is already raising little weeks of its own. He laughed, then grew businesslike without turning robot. We start with protection. Separate bank accounts, living trust, new will, security freeze on your credit. Then we breathe. No major purchases for 90 days. I watched him speak and felt my bones lower their shoulder. This was a man who knew the difference between a plan and a brochure. Before any of that, I said, I want my house back. Bob looked at his shoes. He remembered. When my son convinced me to sell it. It's silly for you to manage a whole house alone, Mom. We'll get you a nice condo and you can help us with our dream home. I had folded. I sold the little brick bungalow on Walcott with the fig tree that never quite figured out Chicago, and we pooled the proceeds for his tutor in suburbia with a mortgage that had its own mortgage. I moved into a tidy condo with good light, and the loneliness of new carpet. Matthew nodded. Do you recall the buyer's name? I did. I remember everything that hurts me. Within hours he had records, escrow notes, and 2 phone calls placed. The current owner is a traveling nurse, he said. She took the job in Denver. She's considering selling if the price is right. Would you like to make an offer that's, say, fair and fast? Fair and fast are my blood type, I said. We walked through the house 2 days later. The fig tree was still uncertain but living. The kitchen had been repainted white like a fresh start. My hand found the notch on the mantel where my son had marked his height in pencil. 6, 7, 8 little bones growing up and out. I touched the notch and felt neither nostalgia nor nausea. Just a clear line in me. A border re-established. I made the offer. Fast fare with a small letter attached. I'd like to come home. There are signatures you agonize over and signatures you sign like you're blowing out candles. This was the latter. Matthew set up the trust and slipped the deed inside like a jewel in a velvet box. He had me move the bulk of my after-tax winnings into a ladder of safe, boring instruments with names that sound like accountants at a picnic. You'll sleep at night, he said. Rich people who sleep win. Poor people who sleep win too, I said. We just don't brag about the pillows. He smiled. I also recommend funding a simple LLC if you plan on any ventures. You mentioned a dream? I did. For years I'd wanted a salon. Not just a place for hair, but a place for women to sit down their burdens without having to name them. You come in with roots and leave with a crown. You exchange harmony, not gossip. You pay with cash and leave with courage. And on Thursdays you eat. Eat? Matthew asked, intrigued. Bourguignon, I said. The old way. I learned from a woman who never measured a thing in her life except time served. Beef, wine, patience. The salon will serve bowls in the back on Thursdays. If a lady is truly having a day, she'll get a bowl on the house and a seat by the window. Beauty and stew, Matthew said. A vertical integration I can get behind. We scouted spaces. A corner storefront with tall glass and a stubborn radiator called to me like a hymn. The rent was reasonable, the landlord skeptical, the floors wood with a history of good shoes. I signed the lease and named it the 10 because sometimes a rule becomes a life. I hired 2 stylists. Jada, who could coax confidence out of a curl from 50 paces, and Marisol, whose manicures were tiny celebrations. I installed alabaster pendants that made every woman's skin look like she just forgave someone. On the first Thursday, I made bourguignon in a pot so heavy it took both hands and a memory to lift. The smell crept onto the sidewalk like a promise. Women came in on their lunch breaks and after their shifts, for bang trims and brave talk. We didn't install TVs. We installed good chairs. We offered ice water with cucumber because I've always believed in the luxury of small things. Matthew came by in the evening, looked around, and exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath on behalf of a stranger. You built a place that reminds women they're not extras in their own movie, he said. Actually, I said, stirring the pot. I built a place where the lead takes off her heels and still feels tall. I made a will. I made a trust. I made a life leaflet that said on one side, for Elizabeth's use only, and on the other, no longer accepting mothering from non-experts. I did not call my son. The silence was not revenge. It was rest. News travels without legs. Within a month, my former daughter-in-law's friend's sister came in for a trim, clocked me, and turned ghostly. She did not return. I did not chase. I wrapped a towel around a woman's shoulders and asked about her week. At night, sometimes I would sit on my restored porch steps, look at the fig tree's stubborn leaves, and think about the math of love. How much you give, how much you keep, and who audits you when you start cooking the books for other people's comfort. I thought about that kiss in the airport, light as a lie. I thought about 2 little girls with chocolate on their hands and bathroom maps in their heads. I hoped they were laughing somewhere. One Friday, as summer leaned into itself, Bob sauntered over carrying peaches and a smirk. Visitor for you at the 10, he said carefully. I asked his name, but he said I'd already know. Tell him it's a walk-in only day, I said and grabbed my keys. I opened the salon door, and the little bell announced me like a trumpet with stage fright. There in the corner chair by the window, the one reserved for women whose days had outgrown them, sat my son. He looked thinner and more expensive, like stress had switched his soap. He stood when he saw me, hands empty, eyes trying to stage a reunion his mouth couldn't produce. Mom, he said. I nodded to Marisol, who gathered her polishes and drifted to the back, where Jada, ears sharp, pretended to inventory bobby pins. He took a breath. I'm here to make things right. I folded the towel in my hands, neat straight lines. Son, I said, not unkind. You're here to discover I didn't start a war. His jaw worked like a machine learning a new language. We should talk somewhere private. This is my somewhere, I said. And I like witnesses. He looked around, at the women in chairs flipping magazines they weren't reading, at the peonies in the jar, at the mirror where his face didn't quite recognize itself. He lowered his voice. You're doing well. I'm doing, I said. The well is extra. Good, he said a little too quickly. Because I need your help. There it was, his old opener dressed as concern. I felt my grandmother lean forward in her ghostly chair. I felt the pot in the back simmer a heartbeat. I'll give you 5 minutes, I said. After that, I've got a color processing and a stew to stir. He swallowed. Fine. He glanced at the window at his reflection, then back at me. Tiffany and we've had a rough year. I waited. The clock ticked. Somewhere a hairdryer whispered secrets. He took another breath, the kind you learn from videos about apology. I was wrong in Hawaii. I chose. Careful, I said softly. Some choices have witnesses you don't want. His eyes flashed, then dimmed. I'm here because we're a family. We were, I said, and folded the towel again. Once. He set his palms on the counter like a man steadying himself on a ship. I'm your son. Your only heir. Jada coughed in the back. A woman in chair 2 lifted her brows like a lullaby hitting a sour note. I smiled gently, the way you smile at a child about to learn about gravity. Sweetheart, I said. You might want to sit down before you talk law with a woman who's had a good advisor. He didn't sit. He braced. You can't cut me out. Watch me, I said, and watched the words land on him like fresh snow, cold, clean, inevitable. He opened his mouth to argue, then snapped it shut when the salon door chimed again. Matthew stepped in, sleeves rolled, eyes taking in the room like a chessboard. He nodded at me, then at my son, whose face rearranged itself into something I'd only seen when he was caught with a hand in the cookie jar. Matthew gave me a small professional smile that said, whatever this is, I'm here for it. Afternoon, he said lightly. Did I come at a bad time? Oh, sugar, I said, feeling my spine align like a zipper. You came at the perfect time. And that's when my son leaned toward me, hissed something that made the air in the 10 contract, and promised a storm he didn't know I'd already built a roof for, just as the timer on the color at chair 3 dinged like a tiny bell announcing judgment. My son leaned close, lips tight, voice sharp enough to cut glass. You think you can erase me, Mom? I'll take everything. You forget. I'm your only child. That makes me your only heir. Enjoy your little salon while you can, because I'll bury you in lawyers. Should have stung. Once upon a time it would have. But standing in my own salon, with a towel folded like armor in my hands and a pot of bourguignon bubbling in the back, I felt something unexpected, calm. Son, I said, tone steady as a ruler on a desk. The last time you tried to ruin me, fate handed me a lottery ticket worth $2 million. Do you really want to tempt karma twice? A ripple of laughter moved through the salon. Women know a good line when they hear one. Even Marisol, pretending to buff her nails in the corner, smirked. My son flushed a shade of red that matched the nail polish on chair 2. This isn't a game, he hissed. Exactly, I said. This is my life. Which, for the record, you left me at an airport without a cent to my name. And yet. I spread my hands, presenting the salon, the women, the harmony we'd built. Here I am. Thriving. Without you. Matthew stepped closer, his presence calm, grounding. Legally speaking, he said lightly, your mother is within her rights to distribute her estate however she wishes. I've already filed her updated will and trust. So if you came here to threaten, I'd advise against it. Paper trails are not your friend. My son's jaw clenched. He didn't like Matthew, never had. Too steady. Too unshakable. He muttered something about blood being thicker than paper, and stormed out, slamming the glass door so hard the little bell above it rang like a nervous alarm clock. The salon fell quiet. Then Jada said, well, he's got your nose, but he sure doesn't have your backbone. The room chuckled and I exhaled. That evening Matthew and I sat on my porch. The fig tree rustled like it wanted in on the gossip. He leaned back in his chair, sleeves rolled, the air between us humming with unfinished conversations. He's not done, Matthew said. I know, I answered. But neither am I. The thing about betrayal is that it has a long echo. His words, "I'll bury you in lawyers," rattled around my skull until they unearthed something I tried to forget. 15 years ago, a phone call at midnight, police lights flashing, and my son's trembling hands after he and his buddies wrapped a car around a guardrail. One boy didn't make it. 3 mothers wept. And I, foolish, loyal, terrified, pulled every string I had, begged every favor, twisted every arm, until the charges bent and the record vanished. I told myself I was protecting him. But in truth, I was protecting myself from the shame of raising a criminal. That night replayed in my head now, sharper with age. "We must protect our children," I murmured to Matthew. "But only until they violate the law and the rights of others. After that," I sighed. "After that, it isn't protection. It's enabling." He looked at me carefully. "Liz, what are you saying?" I sipped my tea, eyes on the horizon. "I think it's time I corrected a mistake I made 15 years ago." The next week, little things began happening. A random inspection at the 10. An anonymous complaint about rodents. A fake online review claiming someone's hair had been fried beyond repair. My son was playing dirty, convinced he could smother me under paperwork and whispers. But here's the thing about women like me, we don't smother easy. We simmer like bourguignon. We take the cheap cuts life throws at us, add wine and patience, and turn them into something people line up for. So when the inspector came, I served her stew. When the complaint landed, my loyal clients drowned it in 5-star reviews so glowing they could have lit the street. The 10 didn't wither. It bloomed. And yet I knew. A lost battle is not a lost war. But sometimes you need to switch the battlefield. That night, alone in my kitchen, I opened a dusty folder from the back of my filing cabinet. Old notes. Old phone numbers. The remnants of a case swept under a rug that was now threadbare. My son thought he could blackmail me with inheritance law. But I had something heavier. Something I should have never buried in the first place. I picked up the phone. My voice was calm, steady, unshakable. "Hello? Yes. I'd like to ask about reopening a case from 15 years ago. A fatal car accident. Yes, I have information." The silence on the other end was long, weighty. Then the voice replied, "We'll need you to come in." I hung up, my hand steady. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was acting. And I knew. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about justice, long overdue. And I couldn't wait to see how my son handled justice when it knocked louder than karma. The detective's office smelled of old paper and stronger coffee. The kind of room where truth doesn't come easy, but once it's spoken, it hangs in the air like smoke. I sat across from a man named Ramirez, late 50s, sharp eyes, gray hair slicked back like a man who combs with rules. He flipped through the yellowed file I'd asked them to dig up. My son's accident. The one I'd tried to erase with favors and bargaining chips. "You were the primary witness who kept insisting he wasn't driving," Ramirez said, tapping his pen against the file. "Funny thing is, the other boys swore he was behind the wheel." "I know," I said. My voice didn't shake. "I lied." He looked up, eyebrow cocked. "Why now?" "Because lies don't dissolve," I said. "They ferment. They grow legs. And mine just walked back into my life in an expensive suit and told me he's going to destroy me. So maybe it's time he answers for the one thing I shouldn't have protected him from." Ramirez studied me like a man studies a map before taking the long road. Then he closed the file gently, as if not to wake the ghosts inside. "We'll review," he said. "There's statute of limitations to consider, but fatal accidents, those don't wash out easy. Especially if the families of the victims are still around." "They are," I whispered. I knew it. I'd seen one of the mothers at the grocery store last year. Hair gone gray, grief still sharp. I had ducked into the produce aisle, ashamed to look her in the eye. This time I wouldn't duck. Back at the 10, I stirred a pot of bourguignon while Jada swept hair and Marisol sang along to the radio. The salon smelled of wine and garlic, comfort made edible. My women came and went, leaving lighter than they'd arrived. But beneath the harmony, I carried my secret like a hot coal. Bob dropped by, as he often did, under the excuse of inspecting the stew. He leaned on the counter watching me. "You're quieter these days." "I'm planning," I said. His brow furrowed. "Planning what?" Justice, I said simply. Bob whistled. That a new color we're offering, or should I be worried? I told him about Ramirez, about the reopened case, about the mothers who never got justice because I was too busy saving a son who didn't deserve it. Bob listened, jaw tight, eyes softer than he wanted them to be. You're braver than me, he said finally. Most folks your age just want peace. I want peace too, I said. But peace without truth is just silence. And I've had enough of that. Meanwhile, my son was busy waging his own war. Anonymous calls to the health inspector. Rumors about my stew being unsanitary. A fake report about rodents that earned me a surprise inspection. When the officer showed up, clipboard in hand, I ladled her a bowl of bourguignon and said, "Eat first, inspect later." She did. She finished the whole bowl, licked her spoon, and marked cleaner than my mama's kitchen in the notes. But my son didn't stop there. He started leaving false reviews online. Overpriced. Rude staff. Hair dye burned my scalp. I knew his tone. He never could disguise his punctuation. Within hours, my clients swarmed in defense, posting glowing 5-star reviews so radiant they practically hummed. You can't fight women with lies, Jada muttered one evening, scrolling through the reviews. We've been outsmarting rumors since Eve bit the apple. Still, I knew this was only the beginning. My son was getting desperate. He thought if he broke me down piece by piece, I'd come crawling back. What he didn't know was that I'd already lit the match on a fire he couldn't outrun. A week later, Ramirez called. Mrs. Burke? We've located 2 of the families from the accident. They'd like to meet. Privately. Will you come? I agreed. The meeting was at a church basement, neutral ground. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. 2 mothers sat at a folding table. Faces I remembered all too well. They'd aged as I had, but their grief was ageless. I sat across from them, hands folded, stomach tight. I lied to protect him. I began, voice thick. I told the court he wasn't driving. He was. And because of that lie, you never got justice for your boys. I'm here now to make it right. One mother, sharp-eyed with a trembling jaw, leaned forward. Why now? Because he's still hurting people, I said. And because I can't ask for peace in my own life while sitting on the bones of that lie. The other mother, quieter, simply nodded. Her eyes filled, but she didn't wipe them. We've been waiting 15 years to hear someone say that out loud. For a moment, the room was heavy with everything unsaid. Then the first mother whispered, "Reopen it. We'll stand with you." I left the church basement lighter than I'd felt in years. For the first time, I wasn't carrying my son's sins like my own groceries. That night on my porch, Matthew joined me. He had a file under his arm and the kind of face that tells you he's about to deliver bad news. He knows, Matthew said. Knows what? That you went to the police. I froze. How? Matthew sighed. He has a friend in the clerk's office. He's scared, Liz. Cornered. And a cornered man can get dangerous. I looked out at the fig tree, its stubborn leaves silhouetted in the porch light. I wasn't scared. Not anymore. Good, I said. Let him be scared. He's had me afraid my whole life. It's about time the roles reversed. Matthew studied me, admiration flickering across his face. You know, most people your age. Don't, I interrupted, smirking. Say it and I'll dye your hair pink while you sleep. He laughed, but the laughter didn't erase the tension. The war had officially changed battlefields. My son wasn't just after my salon anymore. Now he'd be fighting for his freedom. And I intended to make sure justice got the last word. When my son found out I'd gone to the police, he didn't call. He didn't show up in person either. He sent a message the only way he knows how, through intimidation. I woke up one morning to find the salon windows plastered with crude flyers. Rats in the tin, they screamed in black marker. Food poisoning. Beware. The handwriting was familiar. It was the same ugly scrawl I used to see on his detention slips in high school. Marisol called me in a panic. Senora Liz. Someone vandalized the shop. Do we call the police? Leave it up, I said, pouring my coffee. For 1 hour. She blinked. 1 hour. Yes. Then take pictures, file the report, and tear it down. Let the neighbors walk by. Let them see what fear looks like when it runs out of creativity. By the time we tore down the flyers, Half the block had already come in for trims and touch-ups. Business doubled that day. Women sat in the chairs shaking their heads. "He doesn't know who he's messing with," one said. Another added, "Only a coward fights with paper." They were right. My son was unraveling, and I hadn't even begun. Meanwhile, Ramirez called again. The case was officially reopened. "We'll need you to testify," he said. "And if we can prove suppression of evidence, it won't just be your son in hot water. Whoever helped cover this up, judges, lawyers, they may face consequences too." I swallowed. I remembered the phone calls I'd made 15 years ago, the favors I'd begged, the lies I'd told. It was my fingerprints all over the cover-up. If the law dug too deep, I could be dragged down too. That night, sitting on the porch, I told Matthew. "Then you may go down with him," he said carefully. "I know," I replied. "But maybe that's justice too. I bought him 15 years of freedom he didn't deserve. If I have to pay a price, I'll pay it." Matthew leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You're braver than half the clients I used to advise. They jump through flaming hoops to protect their assets, even from their own mistakes. You'd burn the hoop yourself just to prove you could." I chuckled. "Well, Matthew, the thing about being 65 is that I've already survived everything I was afraid of. At this point, truth is just another haircut." 2 days later, my son escalated. He showed up at the 10 in the middle of a busy afternoon. Women were under dryers, Marisol was painting nails, and Jada was blow-drying a head of curls that looked like a halo. He slammed the door open. "You think you can ruin me?" he shouted. Every dryer went quiet. 30 eyes turned to him. I walked out from the back, apron on, ladle still in my hand from stirring the bourguignon. "No, son," I said calmly. "You did that yourself 15 years ago." His face paled. "You wouldn't dare." "I already did," I said. The silence in the salon was thick enough to braid. Women glanced between us, sensing history written in capital letters. Finally, Jada spoke. "Honey, maybe you should sit down. You look like your blood pressure's about to sue you." The room laughed, small, sharp. My son's ears burned. He stormed out, slamming the bell so hard it flew off the hook and clattered to the floor. I picked it up, rehung it, and said, "Stronger than before. Like me." That night, I pulled out the old photo box. I hadn't touched it in years. Pictures of my son as a boy spilled out, smiling at Christmas, gap-toothed at 6, holding his first baseball glove. The boy he had been, the boy I loved so fiercely, the boy I betrayed myself to protect. I thought about that night 15 years ago. The call. The flashing lights. His voice cracked with terror. "Mom, please. Don't let them take me." And me, a fool, promising him the impossible. But as I stared at the pictures, I realized something. I hadn't betrayed myself back then. I'd betrayed those mothers. Those boys. Justice itself. And justice has a long memory. The fig tree rustled outside, its stubborn leaves scratching the window. That tree had survived storms, frost, years of neglect. It bore fruit only when it damn well pleased. It reminded me of myself. I whispered to it, "This time I'll do it right." A week later, Tiffany showed up. Alone. No children in tow, no husband shadowing her. She looked frayed, her perfect hair limp, her eyes carrying more baggage than her designer purse. "Elizabeth," she said, voice trembling. "He's gone. He left us. Took the last of our savings and disappeared. 3 kids, a mortgage, and nothing else." I studied her. The woman who once ordered me to watch my own grandchildren like I was a babysitter. The woman who whispered poison into my son's ear until he left me at an airport like forgotten luggage. I could have laughed. I could have slammed the door. Instead, I stepped aside. "Come in." She blinked, surprised. "You'll let me?" "Of course," I said. "Because I know something you don't." "What's that?" I reached into my wallet, pulled out a crisp $10 bill, and pressed it into her palm. She stared. What is this?" "My grandmother's rule," I said softly. "Always carry your 10 for when life puts you in the most uncomfortable position. 2 years ago, your husband left me at an airport with nothing but this. Now he's left you. You'll cope. I know you will. Because I did." Her hand trembled as she closed it around the bill. She looked at me as if she were seeing me for the first time. Not as a burden, not as competition, but as a woman who had already survived the storm she was just beginning. And in that moment I knew the war with my son was almost over. Because when a man runs from both his wife and his mother, justice doesn't need to chase him. It only needs to wait. Tiffany sat in my kitchen that night, the same kitchen I'd once surrendered so my son could have his dream estate. Now it was mine again, with the fig tree outside keeping guard like an old, faithful soldier. She held that $10 bill as if it were a life raft, Knuckles' white eyes red. He emptied the accounts, she said flatly. The mortgage is 3 months behind. I don't even know how I'll buy groceries. And the kids? Her voice broke. The kids keep asking where Daddy is. I poured her tea, the kind you brew for heartbreak, chamomile, honey, and a little bourbon when no one's looking. She stared into the steam as if it could spell out answers. You'll manage, I said. Because you have no other choice. She looked up sharply. That's it? No sympathy? I leaned back, folding my arms. Sympathy is a blanket. It keeps you warm for a night. I'm offering you armor. I survived him. You can too. Tiffany flinched at the word survived, but she didn't deny it. She just sipped the tea and whispered, I don't even know who I married anymore. I almost laughed. Almost. But the bitterness sat too heavy. You married the boy I raised, I said. The boy I protected when I should have let him face the music. Now you're hearing the song. The next day Ramirez called. Mrs. Burke, your son skipped state. Likely trying to outrun the reopened case. We've issued a warrant. If he surfaces, we'll know. I thanked him, hung up, and felt an odd mixture of relief and ache. My son, my only child, was now a fugitive in more ways than one. But maybe that was justice's way of sparing me a courtroom scene that would have shredded me in public. At the 10, life surged on. Women filled the chairs, their laughter bubbling like champagne. The bourguignon on Thursdays became legendary, so much so that the local paper ran a story. Salon by day, stew by night. One woman's recipe for harmony. Business thrived, not in spite of my son's sabotage but because of it. Every lie he spread only drove more women through my door. Curious to see the battle-hardened woman who fought back with hair dye and stew. Your son's biggest mistake, Jada said one afternoon while rinsing a client's curls, was forgetting that women don't just survive wars, we build communities from the rubble. I smiled. She was right. The 10 wasn't just a salon anymore. It was a sanctuary. But peace never lasts long when you share DNA with a storm. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived at my doorstep. No return address. Inside, court papers. My son was suing me, claiming mental anguish and defamation of character. The irony was so thick I could have spread it on toast. Matthew looked over the papers, eyebrows raised. This won't stick. He has no evidence, no credibility. But he's not trying to win. He's trying to drain you. Good luck, I said dryly. I've been drained by experts, divorce lawyers, mortgage brokers, Tiffany at Target. I'm still here. Still, I felt the familiar tug of exhaustion. I had fought so hard to rebuild my life. Did I really have the energy for another war? That night I sat under the fig tree, listening to the leaves whisper in the summer breeze. My grandmother's voice came back to me. Life slaps hurt most when you stand still. Keep moving, Liz. Always keep moving. So I made a decision. If my son wanted to fight, I'd fight smarter. Not with lawyers, not with money, but with memory. I began gathering old photographs, letters, receipts, everything that painted a picture of who he was and who I had been to him. Not to parade in public, but to remind myself. To prepare. One evening, as I sifted through the box, Christine and Lucy appeared at my doorstep. My granddaughters, now older, wiser, their eyes shadowed by their father's absence. Tiffany had sent them with an overnight bag. Grandma, Christine said, her voice steady. Mom says we should spend some time here. She says you're stronger than anyone. Lucy piped up, clutching her stuffed rabbit. And we like your stew better. I laughed genuinely, fully, for the first time in weeks. I hugged them both, inhaling the smell of crayons and innocence. For all the wars raging around us, here was the truth. These girls deserved better. Then you'll stay, I said. And I'll teach you what strength really looks like. Over the next few days, the house came alive again. The girls filled it with laughter, drawings taped to the fridge, Questions that only children ask. Grandma, why do fig trees never give up? I told them stories, not just fairy tales but truths. About resilience. About carrying your emergency 10. About choosing dignity over despair. And quietly I realized, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for them. To show them that women don't crumble. We rise. So when the court date loomed, I didn't feel fear. I felt purpose. I told Matthew. He thinks this will break me. But this isn't about me anymore. This is about two little girls who need to see what happens when a woman refuses to bow. Matthew smiled, pride glinting in his eyes. Then let's give them a show. And with that, I ironed my best blouse, tied my hair back, and prepared to walk into court not as a victim, not as a defendant, but as a woman who had already won the moment she stopped being afraid of losing. Courtrooms smell the same no matter what state you're in. Wood polish, paper dust, and nervous sweat. I walked in wearing my best navy blouse and pearls that weren't real but looked like they meant business. My granddaughter's drawings were tucked in my purse like talismans. My son sat at the opposite table, a slick lawyer at his side. His suit just a little too shiny. His smile just a little too sharp. He didn't look like the boy I raised. He looked like every bad decision in a catalog. He smirked when he saw me. I gave him nothing. The judge, a woman with eyes like steel and a bun so tight it could cut glass, called the room to order. My son's lawyer rose. Your Honor, my client has endured severe mental anguish and reputational harm due to his mother's actions and statements. He is her only child, her heir, and yet she has maliciously attempted to disinherit him, spread damaging rumors, and reopen a closed case for personal revenge. I nearly laughed. Heir? As if blood alone was currency. When it was my turn, Matthew rose, calm as a lake. Your Honor, the plaintiff left my client stranded at an airport with no money, no identification, and no support. She survived only through her resourcefulness. Since then, the plaintiff has attempted repeated harassment, false complaints, vandalism, defamatory online posts. My client has documented every instance. As for the claim of inheritance, he held up the will. The law allows any individual to distribute their estate as they see fit. Blood relation does not equal entitlement. The judge leaned forward. And the criminal case? Matthew glanced at me. I stood spine straight, voice steady. Your Honor, 15 years ago, I lied to protect my son. I swore he wasn't driving the car that caused a fatal accident. He was. I've since come forward to the authorities. If that costs me my reputation, so be it. But I will not lie again. Not for him. Not for anyone. The room went still. My son's face drained of color. For once he had no smirk. The judge's gavel came down. This case is dismissed. Mr. Burke, if the reopened investigation leads to charges, you will answer for them in criminal court. Mrs. Burke, you are free to go. Free to go. 2 words that tasted better than victory. Outside, the reporters were waiting. Word of the reopened case had leaked. Microphones shoved toward me. Mrs. Burke, is it true you lied 15 years ago? Do you regret protecting your son? What message do you want to send to other mothers? I paused, looked straight into the cameras and said, we must protect our children, yes, but only until they violate the rights of others. After that, it's not protection. It's enabling. And enabling destroys everyone in the end. Then I walked past the cameras head high. Back at the 10 business boomed. Women filled the chairs, hungry for more than just beauty. They wanted strength by osmosis. They came in whispering, left in laughter. My stew pots emptied faster than I could fill them. One woman leaned across her cape as Jada snipped. You know, Elizabeth, you've become a kind of legend. I arched an eyebrow. Legend? I'm just a woman with a ladle and good insurance. No, she insisted. You're proof. Proof that women don't have to roll over. That we can fight back even at 65. I didn't argue. Legends are just stories that refuse to sit down. But my son wasn't finished. Oh no. He started playing a different game, the stock market. He tried to outmaneuver me financially, leaking rumors that the 10 was bankrupt, betting on my failure. He even bribed an inspector to try shutting me down again. But women rallied. Clients doubled. Reviews soared. Even the inspector, after a free bowl of bourguignon and a trim from Jada, wrote in his report, Sanitary, thriving, and smells better than my mama's Sunday dinner. Every scheme he launched collapsed like a bad souffle. And still he raged. One night Tiffany called. Her voice was quiet, trembling. He's in another state. He left us, Liz. No money. No explanation. Just gone. I breathed in. Out. Then you'll stand. Like I did. I don't think I can, she whispered. I reached into my wallet, pulled another crisp 10, and held it in my hand though she couldn't see it. Yes, you can. Because you already are. There was silence, then a broken laugh. You're stronger than me. No, I said. I'm just older. Which means I've already learned the lesson you're learning now. Survival is a choice. Make it. That night I sat under the fig tree again. The leaves shifted in the wind, stubborn, alive. I thought about my grandmother, about her $10 rule, about the kiss of Judas at that airport. And I realized the money, the salon, even the stew, they were just symbols. The real victory was that I'd stopped waiting for love from a man who only knew how to take. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone's mother. I felt like myself. And I knew my son hadn't just lost his case. He'd lost me. Forever. When a storm finally passes, you don't sit and admire the wreckage. You sweep it, burn it, plant flowers on top. That's what I told myself after the court dismissal. My son had vanished into another state. The investigation trailed him like a shadow, and Tiffany was piecing herself together with my $10 bill folded into her wallet like scripture. But storms don't leave quietly. They leave echoes. One evening as I locked up the 10, a figure lingered across the street. Tall, hunched, hoodie pulled low. My heart gave a quick drumbeat. I knew that posture. A boy once, a man now, but always mine. My son. Coward. I called louder than I meant. Come in or leave. Don't haunt me like a bad dream. He didn't move. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. Marisol, watching from inside, whispered, Senora Liz, was that him? Yes, I said, sliding the deadbolt home. That was the ghost of a boy I once raised. The next morning Ramirez rang. We think he's planning to flee again. Maybe overseas. If he runs, the case will get harder. But if he stays, we've got him. Let him run, I said. The farther he goes, the less he can hurt the people left behind. But I didn't really believe it. Running men always leave debts behind. And debts have long legs. Meanwhile, life at the 10 bloomed brighter than ever. Thursdays became a ritual. Women didn't just come for hair. They came for bourguignon, for laughter, for the safety of walls built by women for women. Some even brought their daughters, teaching them that beauty isn't in gossip but in harmony. Christine and Lucy came often too. They swept floors, folded towels, and bragged to clients. Our grandma owns this place. I let them, smiling at their pride. They were learning something more important than folding towels. They were learning how to stand tall even when the world leans heavy. One Thursday, as I ladled stew, Christine tugged my sleeve. Grandma, are you still mad at Daddy? The question landed like a stone in water, ripples through my chest. I knelt so we were eye level. Sweetheart, I said, I'm not mad. I'm finished. Do you understand? She frowned. Like when you finish a story? Exactly, I said. The story of me and your daddy, it's finished. I'm writing new ones now. Ones where you and Lucy are the heroes. She smiled, gap-toothed, satisfied. Then I want mine to be about space. Lucy chimed in. Mine's about rabbits. And just like that, the heavy stone in my chest lightened. But my son wasn't idle. No, he was plotting, gnawing, trying to claw his way back into my life through the only door he thought he had left, revenge. First, he filed anonymous complaints again. Rodents. Burnt scalps. Unsanitary stew. Each one fell flat, smothered by the loyalty of my women. Then he tried to leak financial scandals to the press. Reporters sniffed around, curious. But when they came to the 10, they found a sanctuary, not a scandal. The article that finally ran was titled, The Salon That Survived Betrayal. It painted me as a warrior, not a villain. That must have gutted him. Still, I waited for the real strike. Because my son, for all his failures, was nothing if not persistent. And it came 3 weeks later. A fire inspector arrived unannounced. Clipboard in hand, stern face. We've had reports, he said. Of course you have, I answered, leading him in. He looked around, poked the extinguishers, checked the exits. His face softened when he saw the women, laughing under dryers, sipping iced water. Then Jada pressed a bowl of bourguignon into his hands. He tried to resist. He failed. By the time he left, he was smiling. "You've got one of the safest, cleanest businesses I've inspected in years," he said. "Keep it up." After he left, I gathered my girls. "That was his last trick," I said. "Now we switch from defense to offense." They nodded like soldiers. That night I dug deeper into the past. 15 years ago, I'd begged, borrowed, and lied to save my son from consequences. Judges, lawyers, strings pulled in shadows. I had names. And I wasn't afraid to speak them anymore. I wrote a letter, long, detailed, unforgiving. Every favor, every phone call, every lie. I mailed it to Ramirez, sealed with the truth 15 years overdue. When I dropped it in the mailbox, I felt something shift inside me. Like a bone finally setting after a bad break. 2 days later, Ramirez called again. "Mrs. Burke, your statement fills in the gaps. With this, we've got enough to reopen the accident case fully. If he runs now, it'll be with a nationwide warrant on his back." "Good," I said. "Let him know that his mother finally stopped covering for him." That evening, Tiffany returned. Her face was tired, but her eyes clearer. She handed me the $10 bill I'd given her. "I don't need this anymore," she said. "I found a job. It won't be easy, but we'll survive." I pushed the bill back into her hand. "Keep it. Pass it on when life slaps your girls one day. That's how the rule works." She stared at me, tears threatening. Then she nodded. And I thought, maybe this was what my grandmother meant all along. The 10 isn't just for survival. It's for passing strength down the line. One woman to another. Like a torch that never burns out. Later that night, sitting under the fig tree, I heard the news on the radio. A local man wanted for a reopened vehicular homicide case has fled the state. Authorities believe he may be heading west. Warrants are pending. I closed my eyes. The fig tree whispered in the wind, leaves rustling like applause. My son was gone. Again. But this time I didn't feel abandoned. This time I felt free. Freedom doesn't fall on you like rain. It seeps in slowly, like sunlight through a crack in the blinds. That's how it felt the weeks after the warrant went public. My son was on the run, and for the first time in years I wasn't running after him. Life at the 10 carried on. The salon hummed with laughter, scissors, and the faint perfume of garlic and red wine every Thursday. Women came not just for beauty but for belonging. The chairs became confessionals, the mirrors showed more than hair. They reflected resilience. One woman said as Marisol polished her nails, "Liz, I haven't been afraid since I started coming here. You made me remember I've got a backbone." I smiled, wiping down a counter. "Darling, you've always had one. I just helped you dust it off." One evening, Christine and Lucy curled up on my couch with their homework. Tiffany sat at the table, flipping through job listings with tired determination. "Grandma," Christine asked suddenly, "will Daddy ever come back?" The question hung heavy, but I'd learned not to dodge the truth. "Maybe," I said. "But if he does, he won't be the same. And neither will I." Lucy, ever the blunt one, frowned. "I don't want him back. He makes Mommy cry." Tiffany closed her eyes, tears slipping down. I reached over, squeezed her hand. "You'll cope," I whispered. "I know you will." 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. Postmarked from somewhere out west. The handwriting was unmistakable, my son's. I opened it on the porch under the fig tree. The words were messy, desperate. "Mom, you've ruined me. They're after me because of you. You betrayed me. You'll regret this. I'll never forgive you." I laughed. A short, sharp sound that startled the neighbor's dog. Never forgive me? I thought. Forgiveness was never his to grant. I folded the letter, tossed it into the bourguignon fire pit I sometimes used for kindling, and watched the flames eat his words. Ashes. That's all they ever were. Business at the 10 soared higher. The salon became the heartbeat of the neighborhood. Women didn't just book appointments, they booked space in a revolution. A reporter from a national magazine came by, sniffing for a story. "Why do you think your salon thrives while others struggle?" she asked. I leaned against the counter, smiling. "Because women come here for more than beauty. They come here for their crowns, yes, but also their courage. We don't gossip, we fortify. And once a woman remembers who she is, you can't shut her down. The article hit the stands 2 weeks later. The 10. Where women don't just get beautiful, they get brave. I clipped it, taped it to the salon wall. My grandmother would have been proud. But even as the salon thrived, the past still crept in at night. Some evenings I'd dream of my son as a boy, gap-toothed, giggling, running through the sprinkler in the backyard. I'd wake with tears I didn't expect, torn between the boy I loved and the man I couldn't save. One night, Matthew found me on the porch, staring at the fig tree again. "You okay?" he asked softly. I sipped my tea. I did the right thing. But right doesn't mean painless. He sat beside me, close enough that his shoulder brushed mine. That's the hardest part about justice. Doesn't heal you. Just evens the scales. I looked at him, at the man who'd become my anchor without ever demanding to be. "Matthew," I said, "do you think it's too late for me to start over?" He smiled, slow and sure. "Liz, you've already started over. You just haven't noticed." The next Thursday at the 10, as I ladled stew into bowls, Christine announced loudly to the entire salon, "My grandma is a millionaire and she's the bravest woman I know." The room erupted in laughter and applause. Women raised their water glasses in a toast. And I felt something warm, powerful, and unshakable rise in my chest. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a survivor. I felt like a queen. And as the fig tree rustled outside the window, stubborn and alive, I knew the final chapter of this war was coming. And I was ready for it. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday, which is how endings often come. Quietly, without trumpets. I was sweeping hair at the 10 when Ramirez called. His voice was measured, professional, but I heard the weight in it. "Mrs. Burke, we found him. Your son. He's been picked up in Nevada. Extradition is in process. He won't be coming home, not the way you remember." I set the broom aside, my hand steady. "Thank you, detective." When I hung up, the salon felt different. Lighter, as if the walls themselves exhaled. Jada noticed. "Good news." "Justice," I said simply. A week later, Tiffany came by with the girls. Her face was tired, but her shoulders were straighter. "They told me," she said quietly, "about the arrest." I nodded. She looked down at her hands. "I don't know whether to cry or breathe." "You'll do both," I said. "That's how women survive." Christine hugged me tight. Lucy climbed onto my lap. "Daddy's in trouble, isn't he?" Christine whispered. "Yes," I said gently. "And sometimes trouble is the only thing that teaches a person who they really are." Lucy frowned. "But who are we then?" I smiled. "We're the ones who keep living. That's who." Life didn't stop. The salon thrived, Thursdays smelled of stew and laughter, and women carried their courage out the door like goodie bags. My story spread further than I ever meant it to. People wanted interviews, podcasts, even a book. One interviewer asked, "Elizabeth, what would you say to mothers who feel betrayed by their children?" I looked straight into the camera. Don't mistake blood for loyalty. Don't protect your children past the point where they learn responsibility. And when betrayal comes, and it will, don't shrink. Stand. Always stand. One evening as summer faded, Matthew joined me on the porch. The fig tree was heavy with fruit, stubborn as ever. He handed me a basket. "Thought we'd make jam," he said. We worked in the kitchen, chopping, stirring, our hands moving in easy rhythm. Somewhere between boiling jars and spooning sugar, he looked at me differently. Like a man who sees not just resilience but a future. "Liz," he said quietly, "you know you don't have to carry all this alone anymore, right?" I met his eyes. Strong, steady, no pity, just respect. For the first time in a long while, I let myself believe it. "Maybe I'll let someone help carry it," I said. "But only if they know how to keep pace." He smiled. "I can keep up." And just like that, a new chapter peeked around the corner. Months later, the trial began. I didn't attend, justice didn't need my applause. But I heard the outcome. Guilty on multiple counts. My son would spend years behind bars. When the news broke, I sat under the fig tree, holding my grandmother's old $10 bill. The same one that had started it all. I thought of her words. Just in case something happens in life, always carry your 10. I carried it. I used it. And it turned into millions, not just dollars but lessons, strength, freedom. That night Tiffany came over. She handed me a folded bill, another 10. "It's time I passed it on," she said. "For Christine. For Lucy. For when life slaps them like it slapped us." I pressed it back into her palm. Good. Because the 10 isn't money. It's memory. It's survival wrapped in green paper. Pass it on and they'll never be powerless. We hugged, two women once divided, now bound by scars and resilience. So here I sit 65 under a fig tree that refuses to die, with a salon that hums like a heartbeat and a life no betrayal could bury. My son is gone but my legacy is here, woven into every laugh at the 10, every bowl of bourguignon, every woman who leaves my door taller than when she walked in. The last time he tried to destroy me, fate handed me a lottery ticket. This time it handed me freedom. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this: karma doesn't rush, but it always arrives. I raised my glass of iced tea to the tree, to the night, to my grandmother's voice echoing through time. "Here's to the 10, I whispered. "And to never bowing down." The leaves rustled back, stubborn, alive like applause. The end.